Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Thursday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and the dream is over. Last night, despite the Mets soundly defeating the Miami Marlins, the Milwaukee Brewers soundly defeated the Cincinnati Reds, ending the Mets' Cinderella bid for a playoff spot in 2019, but not ending the season. Still 4 games left in the year. I'm going to talk about what happened last night, what we have to look forward to for the rest of the season, and do that on today's show. Back in 2006, after Carlos Beltran struck out in Game 7, I was upset. We all were upset, right? It was something was ours and was stolen from us in 2006. And I used to listen to I guess you could call it a podcast at the time. I don't really know what the formal name for it would be, but it was an audio show on the internet. I think it was pre-podcast distinction, but the host was Rob Zafudo. I'm pretty sure that was his name. And he did a Mets audio show. And I'll never forget it. I actually called in. It wasn't a live show. You know, he had like a phone number where you could call and leave a voicemail, and he'd play it on the air. And I remember the tone of my call, and it was very even keel. Like I didn't go crazy. I didn't like scream and yell and call for Beltran's head. Instead, I sort of took a calm approach to it and said, "Hey, this is the start of something that we need to be proud of and happy about." And it turned out to not be true in 2006. We know what happened in 2007. We know what happened in 2008. That being said, and the reason I'm bringing that up is that I think that I feel the same way about 2019 as I did about that loss in 2006. And really, when you look at it, I could almost feel better about this year because there's so much young talent on this team that gained some really valuable playoff atmosphere type, pressure cooker type games over the last 4 to 6 weeks. They have really gelled as a unit. I mean, chemistry wise, this team is off the charts with how well they get along with, and again, I don't give Mickey Callaway a lot of credit for being a good manager, but he has to take some, and not take some, but get some credit for what he's been able to do with this locker room and keeping them motivated, keeping them playing hard to the last out. You know, you look at what happened in Chicago with the Cubs this year, and in Philly with the Phillies, 2 very talented teams. Excuse me. 2 very talented teams, both with postseason aspirations, and both of them have fallen apart over the last 10 days. I mean, completely fallen apart. And the Mets didn't. They didn't. They've played hard every single game, no matter how hard they've been kicked while they're down. They keep coming back. No matter how many times the media and Mets Twitter and fans and everybody has called them dead, they've risen and fought back and done so admirably. And I don't know, there's just something about this team that I think if Brodie Van Wagenen is able to build a quality bullpen, and I know that's a tall task in 2019, but if he's able to go out there and acquire bullpen pieces that can replace the 4A arms that we've had to rely on over the last 4 years or so, and I'm talking about like the Drew Gagnos and the Tyler Bachelors and the Chris Mazzas and the Paul Sewalds and the Chris Flexens. These are not major league Daniel Zamora. These are not major league caliber relievers. And if Brodie is able to go out and get 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 Luis Avalon type bullpen arms to come in and bolster the bullpen, if he's able to bring back Brad Brach. Boy, that's a mouthful. Bring back Brad Brach, which he should. That would go a long way. There's a lot of stuff that Brodie can do to address this bullpen, And there's honestly, I know that it'd be nice to have a center fielder, and there are other things that need to be on the to-do list. But man, the rest of this team is really solid around everything except for the bullpen. And I've said it a billion times, but what could have been if the bullpen was decent this season. But anyway, last night the Mets did play a game. They won soundly. Jacob deGrom, I think, put the ribbon on his second consecutive Cy Young season. He's been the only pitcher who has been in the mix for the Cy Young over the last month who's been trending upwards as opposed to downwards. And I think that's the kicker there. You look at Hyunjin Ryu from the Dodgers, and his ERA has increased by a full run over the last 4 or 5 starts. He's just not been good. He's faltered down the stretch. Scherzer, similar situation. The injury doesn't help that Scherzer missed some time because of injury, and honestly, he hasn't come back that strong since that injury. So Scherzer's gone down as well. And Jake does not have Verlander or Garrett Cole in the same league to worry about. So this I don't know who else could get this award other than Jacob deGrom at this point. I really don't. So kudos to Jake for capping off a really successful season, a follow-up to what was probably one of the best pitched seasons I've ever witnessed in my life last year, and he follows it up with something that's almost as close. And he got an extra win in the mix. So he got 11 wins this year to 8 losses. Last year he was 10-9. So, I mean, man, good job, Jake. Next year you're going to have 12 whole wins. That's incredible. The other thing from last night, of course, was Pete Alonso hitting his 51st home run. So if you're keeping track at home, Judge has 52. Pete has 51. Let me do them. He has 1 home run he has to hit to catch up and tie Judge's rookie record. And Pete's got 4 games to do it. I think he's going to beat the record. I think he's going to end the season with 54 home runs. Yeah, we'll see. That's what we have to look forward to. Some sad news from last night. Jeff McNeil got hit in the hand. He will miss the rest of the season. It's only 4 games, but hopefully it's not a really bad injury that keeps him sidelined from baseball activities for too long. I mean, if you can pick a time to get hurt with this kind of an injury, right now is like literally the best time to do it, because if he has to miss extended time, it's not like he's missing games and he's going to have to try to come back in the middle of the season and regain his stroke. He's not going to have to worry about that. So hopefully it's a quick heal for him over the winter, and the Flying Squirrel returns next year to play third base and or left field and or whatever. So bottom line with this show today, despite the fact that the Mets are eliminated, very positive feeling. I feel very, very positive about what's happened this season, and I'm going to choose to not dwell on the negative. I'm going to do a more in-depth, a more thorough recap of the season after the regular season is over. So sometime next week, as the playoffs kick off, I'll sort of do a little recap of the season and talk about some of the things that I predicted and see how well I did with some of those preseason thoughts that I had. But one final thing I noted on Twitter yesterday, and I said it in the show yesterday. It kind of clicked yesterday while I was driving, and I mentioned Michael Conforto and who he reminds me of, and I mentioned Carlos Delgado. And I didn't look these numbers up when it hit me. Like it wasn't like I'd had the numbers in front of my face. It just was kind of a feel thing, and it just kind of ran in front of my face or whatever. I went and looked it up. So I did a year-to-year comparison, and I took Delgado's 3 healthy seasons with the Mets, 06, 07, and 08, and I've compared them to the last 3 seasons that Conforto, and that's including this season, that Conforto's put up for the Mets, 17, 18, 19. Keeping in mind that in 17, Conforto was injured, and he missed the last, month and a half or so of the season with that freaky shoulder injury, whatever. But in any event, I was pretty close with those numbers. And my point to sort of making that comparison was that Delgado in his early days with the Blue Jays, he was like a 330 hitter. And as his career progressed, he regressed and turned into a 260, 270, even 250 something hitter. And I think that's what Michael Conforto is. You know, Conforto doesn't have to hit 330. I think he can, but he doesn't have to. The 06 through 08 Mets, if you look at Delgado's power numbers and his RBI numbers, they're huge. But you got to remember that when you look at that comparison, Delgado batted cleanup for that team, and he had David Wright batting behind him, so he was always very well protected. By the way, I loved that lineup. That 06 lineup is for me my favorite Mets lineup, batting order lineup. Period. It was so well constructed, and to his credit, Willie Randolph did not tinker with the lineup. And frankly, when you have guys that are as good as the guys that he had, you don't really have to. But you know, Conforto doesn't really have that same protection, because he's the protection for the cleanup hitter, whoever that might be, most of the time. Sometimes he bats in front of the cleanup hitter. Mickey kind of tinkers around with the lineup too much, but whatever. But anyhow, my whole point to this is I'm going to put this on my blog. I'll link to it below this video in the comments section. So check out those comparisons. You know, the Delgado and Conforto comparisons. I think you'll be surprised to find that they're similar players, and the bottom line with that is that there ain't nothing wrong with Conforto being Carlos Delgado. So that'll wrap it up for today. I will be back tomorrow to recap the finale of this 4-game set with the Marlins. Until then, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, let's go Mets.